Guitar intervals, C major, A minor, and related modes, this time focusing in on the F Lydian mode, rotating around, measuring from the specific point, the specific note of the F note, which is one string down from the ceiling, 8 frets up, in other words, on the A string, 8 frets up. And this is the second presentation that we've been focusing in, navigating around, measuring intervals from that F note. Remembering one of our major objectives is to get all of our resources orientated in the same direction, making them as easy on the eye from the perspective of the player of the guitar. And the player of the guitar is, of course, located from behind the guitar. Therefore, my guitar is going to look like I'm left-handed, but I'm actually playing right-handed. We just flip the guitar around, so it's mirroring what you are doing. And when you are behind the guitar, you've got your fretboard on the left-hand side, the low or heavy string, the one closest to the ceiling on top, left to right, going towards the body of the guitar. We have done a similar process, orientating our worksheet, this representing the fretboard, this top E representing the low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling, so that top to bottom, left to right, our fretboard here is organized as though you took your guitar from behind the guitar and just placed those strings on the screen, so that everything hopefully is going the same way, hopefully is as easy on the eyes as possible, so that we can focus our time on what we're trying to learn here, that being the intervals. So we're going to be looking at the intervals around the Lydian mode. Let's give a quick recap of all the kinds of things we're trying to keep in our mind as we do these more kind of, I guess, guitar theory practice sessions. Because most of us don't have a lot of times for these practice sessions. So if you can get a practice session with this theory stuff that crams as much in as possible, you can actually get a lot done in a short time. So what we're doing here is we're basically, if I go up top, we're comparing to the C major or the major scale is basically our key, our reference point oftentimes when we compare every other thing to it, even though it's just one of the modes and we can measure from any point within the mode, any note within the mode. So if we use the major scale to name the modes, we can come up with an absolute numbering system with the modes. So I'm going to call the modes number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on mode. We're focusing here on mode number 4, which is, I look from the perspective of the major scale, is the fourth of the major scale. And if we know how to make our chord constructions from major or minor based on the major chords, we would make the first would be a major chord, the 2 and the 3 would be minor chords, the 4 and 5 would be major chords, the 6 would be a minor chord, and the 7 would be the Locrian, the funny one. So if I then label my modes, the Lydian mode, as mode number 4, I know then that at least it's a major mode because it makes a major chord, therefore has a major third in it. We're also going to be working, starting from this point in the middle of our guitar, which helps us to kind of grow our memorization both ways, up and down the guitar. And we're going to be looking at the shape that most people are possibly most familiar with, the kind of the rock and roll shape, shape number 1 from a caged system. You might call it a G shape, although it would be a G-shaped C major chord here if we played it up top. And it looks like this in pentatonic form, or sounds like this. That's going from A to A. If I add the 2 extra notes to have 7 notes in it, we have that. Most people learn it in the key of A if they're playing here, or they might learn it in the key of E or wherever they're playing it or whatever they're doing. But that's a minor scale if we play it from this point to this point. But if I just start on any other note, then I'd be playing the related mode. So we started by pivoting around this note to figure out our scale around that note and looked at the intervals around that note. As we do all of these, we'll be practicing this same shape. So hopefully the idea here, it's kind of like ultimate, what is it, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We made all the notes that are in the scale, we made a different color. So you're good as long as you don't step on a white note, right? Don't hit a white note. The whole thing's gonna fall apart. You don't get no government funding. Whole thing, it's all over, okay? So just kidding. I'm just kidding. If we say, but that's basically the idea, right? The white notes are kind of like the lava That does mean that if you hit one of them and you're actually playing a song, it might be intentional because you're gonna go outside the key sometimes. But whenever I do go outside the key, I want it to be intentional, right? I want to basically say I'm in key and now I'm doing something outside of the key to add some tension in it. So that's going to be basically the idea here. So as we go through all these modes, although we're looking at different modes, we're actually looking at the same shape, which are indicated by the colored areas. And then the further colors of the green, red, and yellow are representing the major triads with relation to each mode. And those colors will change as we basically go into each mode. So we can learn this shape. We can create this shape by either knowing the shape and saying, I'm just going to noodle around in this shape, which means I know that I'm going to be in the major scale, in this case, C major scale, or the related minor, A minor, or if I focus on any of the other notes, I'll be in one of the other modes. Or I can basically create the scale from a formula, such as the major scale, whole, whole, half, whole, and then if I start from any other note, the formula is going to be different based on the formula of the mode if I start from that mode. Or I can create this shape based on intervals, meaning I'm going to measure from the top part of the scale and look at each distance of each of the intervals within the scale, measuring not from the last note, but from the last interval. So now if I look at the major scale that way, we've got a perfect first, a 2-note away major second, a 4-note away major third, a 5-note away perfect fourth, a 7-note away perfect fifth, a 9-note away major sixth, and 11-note away major seven. The perfects will typically remain the same if I was to then go to the main minor, which is the Aeolian mode, the minor scale. We went then to the Dorian mode, and it's a minor mode. Then we went to the Phrygian mode, and is that where we are? No, that's a minor mode as well. And now we're going to the Lydian mode, which is a major mode, which makes sense because I'm going to call it absolute mode number 4 as I think of it from the major scale, which means it's the fourth. If it's the fourth of the major scale, then it's going to be a major mode, meaning the 1, 3, 5, if I just look at the first 3 notes of the scale, will make a major chord, just like the other major modes, a major mode Ionian and the major mode of Mixolydian, because the third is the key factor, it being a 4-note away major third as opposed to a 3-note away minor third. Okay, so let's do a quick comparison of the intervals here. If we just move that fourth mode up to it being the first, all the notes are the same, but the intervals measuring from this point are going to be different. So we still have a perfect first measuring from the F instead of from the C. We've got a 2-note away major second, which is what we would expect because it's a major mode, and therefore we have a major second, but that major second is also the same distance on the main minor or Aeolian, which is interesting to note. And then we have a 4-note away major third. That's the defining characteristic to make it a major mode, and which would make a major chord if we're thinking about a triad from it. And then we have, sorry, I had to sneeze there. Something's wrong. I can't tell if it's a booger or a nose hair, and it's making me, anyway, that's not important. I'm back. So then we've got the fourth. Notice here I have it as a diminished fifth because that's going to be the way my formula works in Excel. But we can also call that same note an augmented fourth. So the point is it's a 6-note away, and I should call it an augmented fourth rather than this D stands for a diminished fifth is what I'm doing here. So that's a little bit wonky. I apologize for that, but I don't want to mess up my worksheet, so we're going to deal with it. And then we've got, and that's the weird one, by the way. That's the weird one. So if you wanted to go from the Lydian to the major, what could you do? You could take this weird one. If I want to go from F Lydian to F major, I could take this weird interval that was augmented and basically flat it, and then we should be good. So that would be, and then you'd be in a major. So that's the way we can think of how these things are basically related. I get some people that are like, dude, you just do the same shape all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, because what we're trying to do is really learn the relationships between the shapes and then you can shift everything up. And that's one way. Now, again, I know you can't do that with your hand very easily because your mind sees the shape in position. But in theory, you could do that, right? If I know all of the relationships. And even when you're in one shape, we want to really focus in on the different modes. And then we can take that, if we understand that, we can pivot to the other modes multiple different ways in our mind. We can think of it, how we're going to go to multiple different modes, different scales in our mind and actually understand what we're doing. Otherwise, what you end up doing is, I used to have these old scale books where it was like, oh my goodness, when I first tried to learn guitar and they gave me like, here are all the scales that you have to learn. If you were really a pro, you would just memorize all of these scales like a doctor memorize a bunch of Latin terms for every body part or something. It's like, wait a second, that's not the way. That's not the way, man. And so, because they're all related, you don't have to rememorize. You don't want to start over from scratch to memorize the Locrian. You don't want to start over from scratch to memorize like the Dorian mode from the Aeolian mode, right? Because you've already memorized the Aeolian mode, and the Dorian mode only has one interval difference to it. So you kind of want to think of them. You want to think of them together, right? You don't want to like, okay, now it's totally something. It's not totally new. It's all the modes. They're all the same. It's like a fractal picture. You know, if you analyze one piece of the fractal picture, even though the fractal picture is infinitely large like the universe, you get all the information from the fractal piece because the fractal piece is mirroring and reflecting the entire universe, man. Okay, what are you talking? Okay, get back to earth here. Then we have the 7-note away perfect fifth, which is a perfect. So notice the fourth is also funny because it wonked out a perfect. Usually that should be a perfect fourth, and now it's not, right? Because they changed one of the perfects. The seventh is still a 7-note away perfect fifth. I'm sorry, the fifth is still a 7-note away perfect fifth. The sixth is a 9-note away major sixth, which is what we would expect because it's a major mode. That's the same interval for the C major scale. And the seventh is still an 11-note away major seventh, which would make sense because that's the same interval from a major scale. All right, so we've been left off here on the third, remembering that a major third means the third is the third note of the scale. Major should tell us the distance in half steps, but it doesn't for most people on the guitar because we kind of lose that. Therefore, I'm going to actually say that it's 4 notes away, a 4-note away major third, the third being the defining factor, once again, just to reiterate, as to whether something is a major chord and also a major scale. Now, it's also going to be one we know quite well, possibly just by trying to do chords, because it's the 1-3-5. So it's the same from a chord construction standpoint. Here's the third, major third, whether we're thinking about chord construction or scales. All right, so the major third, I can see it on the same string going up here. So if I go from here to here, 4 notes up, that makes sense. There's the sound of it. All right, get that in my ear. Get that in my ear. I got to get that bug the fly out of my ear and the major third in my ear. And then we're going to go up top, get the wax out and the major third in. And then we're going to go up one. If I go up one, remember that if I go up a string, I have to look for the inverse distance. So therefore, if I'm looking at a 4-note away major third, the inverse would be 12 minus 4, which would be a 8-note away, which would be a minor 6 distance. So I have to look for 8 notes. So I'm going to go, okay, that's going to be -5 if I go up between the strings, -5, -6, -7, -8. So if I go from here to here, all right, that's going to be, top to bottom would be a 8-note away minor 6. But if I measure that from bottom to top, that's going to be a 4-note away major third, because if we think about the track here having 12 steps in it, if I go one way around the track and it's 4 steps, then I go the other way and it's a 12 steps track, it must be 8 steps if I did my math right. And I'm an accountant. That doesn't mean I do it right all the time because I'm dependent on Excel. So I'm not like a human calculator, or don't make no mistake. I am not a human calculator, but that's what I'm thinking. All right, let's go down a string. If I go down a string, I could see it right there. So wait a sec. Let's just reiterate this in my mind. So that means that if I go up one string, the 4 note away major third is always going to be 1, 2, 3 frets back, unless I cross the fault line. And I'm only ever going to cross the fault line if I go up one string if I'm on the B string down here. So if I were on the B string, then I would cross the fault line. And because this tectonic plate shifted up during the earthquake to the right, shifted forward, that means that if I go up here, it's going to be a longer distance. Therefore, if I go up one string, the 4 note away major third is 3 frets back unless I cross the fault line, which only happens on the B string. If I only go up one string, then the 4 note away major third would be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back in that particular instance. Okay, so then let's go down here, going down a notch. So 4 note away major third. Now I can just count it out normally. This is 5. And then back here would be 4. We want to know that shape for sure. So we're here, we're going to go down 1, 5, and then back 4. So that means that the 4 note away major third is always, if I go down one string, is always 1 fret back, as opposed to the minor third, which would be 2 frets back typically, unless I cross the fault line. And if I cross the fault line, that could only happen if I only go down one string in one area. So like if I was right here, for example, on the G string, then if I went down, it would be on the same fret. Why? Because this tectonic plate shifted up. So if it was over here before, now it's going to be up one. So the rule is that if I go down one string, the 4 note away minor third is always going to be 1 fret back unless I cross the fault line, which only happens if I'm on the G string and then I go down one string, then the 4 note away major third would be on the same fret. Notice if I go down to this string, it would still be 1 fret back, even though this tectonic plate shifted forward, I'm on that tectonic plate, right? So it's not like the fault line is between these 2 notes. It's between these 2 notes. That's where the problem is. That's when you get lost, when you try to find the cafe and it's off grid because you're a block off because the fault line shifted the entire block up one, and now you can't get your coffee because let's go to the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's going to be the one that's kind of even on both sides. So if I go down 2, I was thinking about something last night. I had like a thought, which is often a dangerous thing to do. But, like I was thinking, like we could think of this as going down one string, but we can also think of it as going up if I went around the horn. So let me just experiment with that. Like, so if I was going up and then I tried to go around the guitar that direction, what would happen? Let me just experiment live here. So we're gonna say if I go up, it's 12 minus 4, which is an 8 notes away distance. So I'm looking for an 8 note away distance. If I go up 1, that's what I call -5. And now this string repeats here, at least if I'm thinking around going around in a circle. So that would still be like -5 right there. And then it would be like -10, and then like -15, and then 15 minus 12 is 3. So it would be like -3, and then 3 plus, wait a sec, I went across the fault line. Let me do it again. It'd be -5, same thing, -10, and then I got to go across the fault line, which would be, which way am I going across the fault line? This way, which would be -15, and -15 minus 12 would be 3, plus 5 would be 8. You see? So I'm just saying we could, like I've been saying, we can't go past because we're out of strings, which is true. But in some cases, you might say it might be actually easier to count it around the horn, which we can do as long as we remember that this string and this string are basically the same string. So you're just gonna, so maybe I'll work that into our practice problem. That might be useful sometimes. It's okay. So for now, let's move on. We're gonna go down to here. So that's gonna be 5, 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. 4 note away. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frets back. Maximal distance that it can be if I can go both ways. And I can't reach it, of course, because it's just out of reach. So there it is. So that's the one that's just out of reach there. And that means that if I go down 1, 2 strings, then the 4 note away major third is always going to be 6 frets back unless I cross the fault line. Now I'm only going to cross the fault line. I could cross the fault line on 2 strings, here or here, right? Because if I was on this string, then I cross the fault line, but you can't see it right there. So let me go up forward. If I was on like this string and I went down 2 strings, I crossed the fault line. So it would be back here, and it would be the same if I was on this string. I'd still cross the fault line back here. So that means that the 4 note away major third, if I go down 2 strings, will always be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frets back, unless I cross the fault line, in which case the tectonic plate shifts up. So it actually helps us out, and it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back, which is actually a reachable distance. All right, let's pull this back on over here. And then just to experiment with this, what if I counted it around the top? I'd have to look for the inverse distance. So we're saying it would be 12 minus 4 is 8. So it would be -5, which repeats -5, and then -5, -10, and then the fault line here, I'm going to go up here to -15. 15 minus 12 is 3, and so -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, which is the inverse distance. So I just want to note that we can, if I want to tie this whole thing together, we can count it by going around the top of the fretboard, which might be a useful exercise. So I'm not sure exactly how it's useful right now, but I think it will be. So I'm going to maybe throw that in the mix. So let's go down another string. We're going to go down 3 strings. So now I'm going to say this is going to be 5, 10, and then the fault line goes this way. So up the fault line 15. 15 minus 12 brings us down to 3, and then 4. So I can count it over here on the guitar. I'm here, 5, 10, fault line, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 4. So boom, boom. So that means if I go down 3 strings and I cross the fault line, then the 4 note away major third is going to be 2 frets forward. But if I don't cross the fault line, which would only happen like if I was up here, so then and I go down 3 strings, it would only be 1 fret difference. So that means that if I go down 3 strings, the 4 note away major third will be 1 fret forward unless I cross the fault line, which actually happens 2 out of 3 possible times here. 2 out of 3 possible times that I cross the fault line if I don't go around the horn again, in which case the 4 note away major third will be 2 strings forward. Now, interestingly enough, I could you could actually think of it as though you were here and then go down 4 strings and not cross the fault line if I think about going around the horn, right? Which might just boggle my brain. But let me see what I'm saying? I could say the fault line is above it here, and then if I went around the horn, I wouldn't hit the fault line again. So it would be I would be 5 here, and then it repeats 5 up here, and then 10, and then 5 up here, and then 10, 15, 15 minus 12 would be 3, and then 4. So you could actually think of it as though you went down 3 strings from here, but you'd go around the horn. And that's probably not the way most people would think of it, but if you can think of it that way, then I think we're getting a better grasp of the guitar. So maybe I just want to point that out. So anyways, let's go down to the next one. So we go down 4 strings. What if we went down 4 strings? Well, then normally, unless I go around the horn, I have to cross the fault line, so there wouldn't be any exception unless I'm crossing the fault, unless I go around the top. So it would be 5, 10, and then up here 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, plus another 5 is 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And we can also think about it. You can say, well, this string is the same as this string up top. So wouldn't it be easier for me to figure it up top, which I might just know the shape. And if I know the shape, then that's good enough for me to figure the bottom one too. If I don't know the shape, I can count it out by saying I have to pick the inverse distance. So a 4-note away major third has an inverse of 12 minus 4, which is 8. So it would be, this would be -5, 6, 7, 8. And that would match down here. So there is going to be that one. Now, it is possible that I measure from here and I go down 4 strings without crossing the fault line, right? Because if I go around the horn, because then I could go like 5, and then 5 would repeat up here, 5, and then 10, and then 15, and 15 minus 12 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So that's a really weird way to look at it, but again, if you can look at things from multiple angles, that's usually good. Like normally, what would you normally do? You would measure the inverse distance from here to here instead of going around the horn this way. But you could go either way. So because it's a circle, and we're just all rotating around in circles, man. That's what we do all day long. All day long, circle, circle, circle. Then we get all upset about it. Why am I going around in circles? What else you gonna do? What else you gonna do? That's all anyone's doing, going around in circle. Okay, let it go. Let's go to the next one. We're on, this one's the funny one. It should be a 4th, but I'm calling it a diminished 5th, which is the same. The reason it should be a 4th is because it should go 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's still gonna be a 6-note away. Right, but it's the same distance as a diminished 5th. So we just pick whichever one is the right one, even though it's the same distance, so that we still can say it's a 4th. So that's why that's kind of the cool thing about our music system, and kind of the weird thing. We kind of shoehorned it in, made it work by giving 2 names to the same distance, which is, kind of weird. But it helps, but then it kind of messes things up a lot at the same time. So, but it is what it is. Anyways, so it's 6 notes away. That's a really weird distance, by the way, too, because there is no inverse of it. So it's that tensiony sound. It gives you like the tensiony sound. And the inverse distance is also 6, because if we go around a circle that has 12 steps in it, if I'm at 6, then I can go 6 one way or 6 the other way. It doesn't matter. It's the same distance. It's just the view is different. Right, because you're walking on one side of the field of the track versus the other side of the track, and one side has the pond next to it and stuff, but the other side has a nice like trees and things. So it's just whichever way you feel like going. It's the same distance. Like, it's not going to give you any more exercise in either direction. All right, so 6-note away is just out of reach, of course. So if I measure it on the same string, whether I go forward or the other way, it's going to be 6 notes away, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom, right? And there's that B. So we're going from here, and I've crossed over the fault line. So 5 would be right there, and then 6. Now this high on the guitar, I can basically reach it, even though it's 6 frets away. If it was further back on the guitar, possibly can't reach it, because normally, again, like 5 frets, it's kind of the maximal distance typically that we can reach. Obviously, if I go backwards, it's going to be 6 frets back this way, and I can't quite reach it, right? All right. So then, I got to get this thing back. Let's go up a string. So if I go up a string, where's my orange one? Oh, there it is. If I go up a string, then usually I would look for the inverse distance, which is 12 minus 6, which is also 6. So I can say, okay, it's just 6. It is what it is. I got 5, and then back one is 6. So if I go from here, go 5, and then back one is 6. So I can go either way. I can go from B to F. That's a 6-note away, which I could call a diminished fifth, or which is possibly more common of a name, and on this term, or an augmented fourth. And if I go from the bottom to the top, that's when I want to call it an augmented fourth if I'm looking at it in relation to the Lydian scale, because I need a fourth, but again, it's the same distance as a diminished fifth. It's just a naming convention. All right, so it gives you that tensiony sound. If we wanted to convert from a Lydian to a major, then all we have to do is say, I'm not going to be picking up the augmented fourth, which pushed it up 1. We'd push it back 1, and that would change the whole shape just by that one note to being an F major. So note that's one of the ways that you can pivot between these shapes. I can say any of the shapes, any of the modes, if I compare that mode to its related major or minor, will only have one interval difference. So if I know this shape really well, one way I might say, hey, look, I want to start playing with an F major, is to simply pick the note that's different from the Lydian, the interval that's different, and change that one note. And then you can still kind of think of everything the same and focus in on that one note being different, right? And okay, so I've already said that. Move on, dude. You're like, get going on the lap. We're never going to make it around the pond if we don't keep walking. So then we're going to go, okay, let's go down 1. If I go down 1, it's going to be 5 and then 6 up this way. So 5, 6, there's that diminish. Anytime I see that shape, that's the diminishing shape. So that means that the 6-note away augmented fourth, which is also a diminished fifth distance, if I go down 1 string, is always 1 fret forward unless I cross the fault line, which only happens on, in this case, the G string, right? So if I go to the G string, then it's not going to be 1 fret forward, but 2 frets forward. Why? Because this tectonic plate moved to the right. It moved to the right and causes us all kinds of confusion, but we just deal with it, man. Deal with it. That's how things are. That's how it is. That's how. Can't I shift the plate back? Well, maybe. But what are you gonna? You're gonna shift. You're gonna put the Pandora back together. Is that what you're gonna do? You're gonna shift them all? No. You just deal with it. Okay. Just deal with it. That's how things are. So let's go down 2 strings. So it's gonna be 5, 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6. Let's count it here. So if I go down 2 strings, 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Can't hit the right string. It's the pick's fault. My pick is not working right. The pick point is messed up. It's not my fault. If I go down 2, so that means if I go down 2 strings, the 6-note away augmented fourth, which is also the same as a diminished fifth, is always 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back unless I cross the fault line, which could happen like two out of the 3 possibilities if we don't go around the horn, which I'm trying not to think about right now because I messed my head up. We could go like to here and then go back to here. I'll think about it later. It's not like I'm scared of it or anything, going around the horn. I'm not scared of thinking about it or anything. I just don't feel like doing it right now. Later on I'll do that. So that means that if I go down 2 strings, that the 6-note away augmented fourth or diminished fifth is always 1, 2, 3, 4 frets back unless I cross the fault line, which happens on two times, could happen on the D string or the G string, in which case, because this tectonic plate shifted up, if I go down 2 strings from there, then I have to find the cafe, the 6th note away, diminished 5th, or augmented 4th, 1, 2, 3 frets back. It's only 3 frets back. All right, let's go down 1. You're pulling too much time, man. I think this is the last one I'm gonna have to do 3 of them tomorrow because this is taking too long. You've got to pick up the pace. You got to pick up the pace. All right, I'm gonna go down 1. I'm gonna take a nap by the pond as I go around the circle here if I'm gonna make it back. And I don't want to do that because there's a bunch of criminals in here. There's probably drug addicts creeping around there. So what was I on? I need to find a B over here. Okay, so now I'm gonna go down 3 strings and cross the fault line. So I'm gonna go 5, 10, and then we shift up here to 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 4, 5, 6. All right, so we're gonna say if I'm on this string, it's gonna be 5, 10, and then up here to 15. 15 minus 3, 15 minus 12 is 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom. Interesting sound. So we're gonna say, all right, so that's gonna mean if I go down 3 strings and cross the fault line, the 6th note away augmented 4th, which could also be called a diminished 5th, is 1, 2, oh man. Oh, now it's all messed up. I can't work like that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up. And if I didn't cross the fault line, which could happen if I'm on the top string, even without going around the horn, that's the only time that could happen. Then, and I go down 3 strings. So if I go down 3 strings, the 6th note away augmented 4th or diminished 5th will be 1, 2, 3 frets up, unless I cross the fault line, which happens 2 out of 3 possible times. In which case, if I go down 3 strings, the 6th note away diminished 5th or augmented 4th will be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up because the tectonic plate shifted to the right. Okay, and so let's go down 1 more. Uno más, por favor. So we're gonna say this is gonna be, now this one, of course, I could go up 1. It's like, why would I count down there? I could just count the 1 at the top, and then it's the same at the bottom. That's the easy way to do it. You're doing laps around the circle for no good reason. Well, because I like the exercise. That's why I like the exercise. Maybe I want to do laps. Maybe I do have a reason. I need to do some laps, okay? Sometimes, but then if you want to do it the easy way, you could say if I go up 1 string, then it's going to be, you could usually take the inverse, but the inverse is still 6. So it's just going to be 5 and then 6, and then that's the same as down here. If I count it this way, it's going to be 5, 10, and then up to the fault line, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, plus another 5 is 8, and then 7, 6. Let's count it out here. So it'd be 5, 10, and then 15. 15 minus 12 is 3. Is 15 minus 12 is 3. Okay, paso. Wait a second. Hold on. It's going to be from here 5, 10, 15. So 15. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, it's 3. And then plus another 5 is 8. 8. Let me do it one more. 8, 7, 6. There it is. I'm going to finish it off looking stupid because I'm a little tired here. I'm a little tired. So let's call it good on that one. So that's going to be the big one. I'm still kind of tripping out on this going around the entire horn. Well, that means that if I go down 1, 2, 3, 4 strings, then I will always cross the fault line if I go down 4 strings unless I go around the horn, in which case the 6th note away augmented 4th or diminished 5th will be 1 fret back. But let's just think about it this way. Like if I started on this note, I could go down 4 strings, which is actually going around the horn, and not cross the fault line, which is a trip, man. So I could go down 1 and it would be 5, and then that string repeats up here, which would still be 5, and then it would be like 10, and then 15, and then, but 15 minus 12 is 3, and then plus 3, plus another 5 is 8, and then 7, 6. Boom. Right? Now, again, it would be a lot easier for me just to say, well, why don't I just count the inverse distance, which would be -5, 4, 3. But again, I think there's, no, -5, it would be the inverse distance from here, which would be -5, which would be -5, 6. -5, 6. Right. Because I'm going up the fault line. There's the fault line. All right. But again, I think there's something to be learned from going around the horn like that. I'm not sure exactly how I want to work that into my routine to pick that up, to get that understanding down, which is why I'm kind of babbling a little bit. But I think I might ponder that more and hopefully do a better job of explaining why that might be useful in future presentations. So next time we'll go into the 7, 9, and 11.